So, a couple of days ago, some of us were circled around after reading, smoking a little, wait, how do you do that? By the side of a building. As I was going from person to person, Ben started acting a little funny, shifting from foot to foot, stepping away, looking down the street. Here, he said? Here? Are you sure? But when it was his turn, he scooted in and he took a little, he didn't inhale. It was very Clinton-esque. And still looking over his shoulder, still expecting the police to show up and nab him, Ben, a white man in Corvallis, sporting a well-groomed beard, wearing khaki pants and flip-flops, an ideal candidate for the Oregon Business Magazine cover. I can picture him standing confidently, maybe a fleece over his shoulder, the caption, "How to dress like a boss in the Pacific Northwest," or maybe something more like this. Anyway, I tried to tell him that he had nothing to worry about, but Ben quickly lost interest in what I was saying. For those of you who know him well, his attention span isn't that great. To the bar, he said, interrupting me, so we went to the bar. Ben doesn't always act like he's about to be arrested. There are many other interesting things that can be said about Ben. One of the most important things, I think we can all agree on this, is his writing. His fiction often mirrors his own life, and he once told me that it's safe to assume that everything he's actually written is actually fact. And one thing I would like to bring up, I think it reveals something intimate and important about Ben, is his interest in restrooms. His stories reveal, A, he occasionally sneaks a peek while at the urinals. B, when reunited with an old friend, it's best to engage in the first conversation while pissing. C, bloodstains are especially difficult to remove from the grout around the bathtub. D, if the faucets in a bathroom have an automatic sensor and they go off when you are nowhere near them, it is safe to assume that a trucker ghost also wants to sneak a peek. Ben writes nonfiction too, and I guess this is a little more revealing than his fiction. He often writes about parenthood, vulnerable narratives that focus on the inherent difficulties of early parenthood, the normal stuff, sleep deprivation, temper tantrums, using the breaker panel to cut power at night to dissuade a preschooler from roaming the house when he should be sleeping, normal stuff. When I was first accepted into the program, I wrote Ben to find out what it was like to be a parent while fulfilling school requirements. He wrote several thoughtful emails answering my questions. Later, I realized how much time that took him, time he probably didn't have. And 1 month into my first year, I remember talking to him. He was at the office computers, typing as I spoke. I said, "I don't think I have time for all of this." He looked at me, eyebrows raised, and said, "You probably don't." I kept going because of that, "you probably don't," because for Ben, "you probably don't" meant finding time to write 3 workshop letters a week with children in the hospital, making it to class even though nights are filled with the horrors of an insomniac 3-year-old. Finding time to write stories and a thesis with children home from daycare with illness after illness after illness. So it is my pleasure to introduce Ben Davis, an amazing father, writer, student. Congratulations, you made it through. You survived.
Just when I promised myself I wouldn't cry at this thing. So this piece I'm going to read you is fiction, but everything in it truly is 100% fact. I mean, it's all true. It's about a character that I knew growing up in my neighborhood. His name was Ward. You hear the engine coming a mile away, and then it's upon you, deafening, like a chainsaw cutting the warmth of your living room. An unmuffled 2-stroke at full throttle, shredding the blue-skied suburban atmosphere. So you peek through the blinds and see a burly man, late 20s, driving a stand-up motor scooter fashioned to liken a Roman chariot. Instead of being pulled by horses, it is trailed by 4 Jack Russell Terriers. They follow without formation, an off-leash posse jockeying for rank, bobbing and jouncing like cans behind a honeymoon car. A fifth terrier, the runt of the litter, sits upright on the platform, poised like royalty at the man's bare feet. As for the man himself, he is a sight above it all. The body of a former athlete, proud chest above a prouder gut, rib and back muscles that were once well defined, now obscured by an insulation of chub, the way snowfall contours jagged terrain. His right arm, fully extended, thumbs the throttle, and the sun glints off the mirrored lenses of his gas station aviators as his head tips back, his left arm cranking a 40-ounce bottle and a brown paper bag up to full guzzle. Sweat beads on his high forehead and streams down sunburnt cheeks through the auburn scruff covering his jaw and neck. He lowers the brew and jumps a curb without mention of brakes, tearing across a huge lawn, which hasn't been mowed in weeks, leaving a ribbon of trampled fescue in his wake. The dogs spread out, marking bushes and sniffing along the perimeter of the tiny brick ranch. The chariot almost topples downhill as he cuts sharply behind the house and stashes the rig beneath the back porch. He scampers around to the front door, where the dogs reconvene, and with sirens closing in the distance, they all disappear through the threshold. Of course, before you saw any of this, you would have already heard that Ward was back in town. I have a bad habit of this, right? I make it seem like that's the natural ending, but I have one more page, so. Let me do one more page and then maybe I can get another one of those. All right. One more scene. Gramps is parked in a wooden chair at the dining table, watching the television across the living room. Some old spaghetti western, volume rattling the speakers. 5 dogs trample in below the screen, and he lifts his head slightly to see over the couch, his mouth agape, curious but unfazed. There isn't much that startles the old man. He adjusts his earpiece in time to hear the door slam, and then he sees Ward, who Gramps recognizes but doesn't know by name. Ward, shirtless and covered with sweat and grime, sits down on the love seat. He props his free hand on his knee, his back straight as a board, careful not to lean back and dirty the upholstery. He takes a deep breath, a long pull from the bottle, and then hiccups, flashing his signature Cheshire at Gramps. Gramps narrows an eye and catches a whiff of Ward's musk. It pollutes the oxygen pumping through the tube under his nose, so he adjusts it deliberately, as a less kempt man might fiddle with his mustache. He stares at Ward with the type of indictment that can only be leveraged by someone who endured the Depression. Then, his jaw still agape, he starts the low hum that serves as the baseline for his mumbling old man dialect. But before he can tell Ward, who he knows only as one of the dozen neighbors that frequently barge in unannounced and head straight for the pantry, that his teenaged grandkids aren't around, there is a knock at the door. The dogs stir, and Ward snaps his fingers, a single precise command that all 5 dogs obey with silence. Gramps and Ward lock eyes as the knocking continues for a second, a third time. Gramps grabs his cane and groans out of his chair, removing the oxygen tube from behind his ears. He hobbles to the door, wheezing quietly, glancing at Ward between labored steps. Through the beveled glasswork is the blur of a uniformed cop. Gramps opens the door and the cop asks if he's seen a man on a scooter with a small herd of dogs, or rather, a herd of small dogs. Gramps looks into the living room and Ward holds his index finger over his lips, thinly parted below his emerald eyes. Gramps shakes his head and mumbles, "Nah." The cop tells him to keep an eye peeled. The guy could be dangerous, and wishes him a good day.